and welcome to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading the Phaedo. We are at the end of the Phaedo and we have hit a tough section that isn't making a lot of sense. Socrates is describing the true earth. He is giving us some helpful metaphors. Imagine a fish who only sees the outside world, the surface of the planet and the stars and the sun and the sky through the ocean. And they think they are seeing just through the air. They don't know that there are people living on the surface of the earth who see the world better, can see the heavens better. They've never met somebody on the surface of the earth. They've never heard them talk about what the things are really like from their perspective. That is like us talking to Socrates. For us, there aren't a lot of people talking about a different perception of the earth that is able to be seen not through our physical senses, but through the ousia, the eye of the soul, or what we might call nous. Okay, and Socrates has been outlining in the Phaedo the doctrine of philosophy being the art and practice of separating the soul from the body, which is death and being dead. So from that perspective, he is describing what the true earth is. Now, he is also talking about how the true earth is where our soul goes when we die. And he is talking about the various passages that souls go to based on how they've lived, based on a judgment that is made on how they've lived, how well they have nurtured their soul, and how well they have learned. Thumbs up. The education of the soul and the nurture. And based on that, they go down various different passages to various different places. Things happen to them. Generally speaking, honors or some kind of punishment, maybe, or something like that. Maybe some kind of learning, perhaps. Not entirely sure, but something like rewards and punishments. And after this, they reincarnate back into the physical world. Socrates has been talking about this already. Certain sorts of people, hedonistic people, might come back as a donkey. Other sorts of people might come back as a hawk or a wolf. People who have lived a generally good life, but haven't done philosophy. In other words, they haven't done their education. Might come back as a bee or an ant in a pretty social community that ants and bees have. But we want to know how we can, what is our purpose here? What is our education? What is our nurture, so that we can avoid those kinds of things and the kinds of punishments or negative experiences that happen in the next place, so we can go to the best place, as it said in the book, so we can fare well and have divine providence wherever we go. So Socrates also talks about extending this metaphor to the true earth, or what we might call the realm of being. Because just like most people are going to go into the inside places, these rivers and what are being talked about as rivers and marshlands, places, being guided by our daemon, the kind of spirit guide that we are all given. While most people do that, we don't want to do that. We want to complete our education, do our nurturing properly, and take that with us into somewhere better even than that. He calls that a kind of prison. The going back and forth, receiving rewards and punishments based on how well we've lived, kind of by chance, not through mastering an art keeps us trapped, and inevitably we'll have negative experiences. We will have to be reborn and forget everything again and develop another problem. This back and forth doesn't really go anywhere until we discover our purpose, our higher cause. This is something Socrates has been talking about, so seeking a higher cause. Now that cause Socrates is helping us out with, he's relaying his own understanding and experience of this journey and this world by saying, you know what your purpose is? A kind of paideia, a kind of learning, which involves a learning and a nurturing. Now, we have been puzzling about this, and we have kind of come to the conclusion, or the working hypothesis, that it's kind of the same thing. The learning would be defining something, and the nurturing would be demonstrating it. And what is that which we're learning and demonstrating? The art of the logos, or the art of the dialectic. We can say either. Dialectic is the structure of the logos and its use, highest use of the logos, so we can call it either. So our purpose, Socrates is helping us to discover for ourselves, is to master the art of the dialectic. And we've talked about how this to master an art doesn't mean believing somebody else. So our old prejudices, our old cultural beliefs, our old mythologies, our old religious beliefs, our old family beliefs, all of these kinds of beliefs have to be purified, because that's not what an art is. An art isn't based on belief or tradition or opinion. And so we've been learning, how do we learn an art? And Socrates has been giving us stages. A kind of right learning, kind of a love of learning, philomethesis, that is a different sort of trust. So a kind of belief, but the highest kind, as a springboard to dianoia. This is where we practice the art of the dialectic. This is our education. This is our nurture. This is what we're here to do, dianoia. This dianoia is what philosophy is, according to what Socrates has been laying out for us. So we could say philosophy, another name for philosophy, philosophia, which is the love of wisdom, which is the virtue or the practice or the nurture of learning dianoia, could be simply philodianoia, the love of dianoia. The same kind of thing, or complementary things. If wisdom is the practice of it, then the thing itself is dianoia. So we're understanding what philosophy is. And as we've gone through the text, we've understood what it isn't. It isn't speculating, it isn't arguing, it isn't debating, it isn't owning people with your ability to quote experts. All of this, it isn't the rejection of true understanding. It isn't the rejection of a knowable realm of being, the true earth. So it isn't all of the things that philosophy is normally thought of as being today, and maybe even in Socrates' time. This is huge for us, because if philosophy is literally our purpose here, philosophy or philodianoia, and without it we will stay imprisoned or enchained to the physical senses and the physical pleasures and pains of our body, keep our soul nailed to the body and won't reach freedom. As Socrates has been saying, separation and liberation from the body is a kind of freedom from our problems. Now we can also say, not just separating our soul from the body, also understanding the cause of our false beliefs. We can throw that in there. And we have the philosophical midwifery series on YouTube that we can check out, that we have on the channel. So if that's our purpose, then it's very, very important. So one question that we have is, how come this isn't talked about? How come we're not learning this at school? This should be, if this is the purpose, this should be day one at grade 1 at school. Well, that's why it's important in the dialectic to talk about what something is, side A, and what it isn't, side B. Because we have to purify our ignorance, side B, while also learning the truth. Last time we talked about if you wanted to learn veterinary medicine, you can't simultaneously hold the understanding that you're learning at school, side A, that puppies come from a boy dog and a girl dog, while also, side B, having the belief that cats are married dogs. And that's where puppies and kittens come from. A funny belief that some children have sometimes. So to really learn, you have to be doing both. Purification from what it isn't, the false belief, while perfecting in what it is. The true understanding. Well, starting as a true belief, but then developed into true understanding. And that true understanding is specifically doing both. A dialectic requires side A and side B. That is the kind of understanding we call dianoia. Now we have to use a Greek word, of course, because we have to reintroduce this into our society, into our way of thinking, into our way of talking. It's been lost, but we're picking it up. So this is the cause of a problem, of course, or a block, because you can't simultaneously hold the false belief and the true belief. They don't work, it doesn't work that way. They are contradictory. So this is the purification of what is false and the perfection of what is true. Socrates shows that both is done through the art of the dialectic. So we can really unify our focus by understanding, well, if that's what we're here to do, if all human beings come into the world and develop a problem, what is false beliefs from your upbringing, your culture, your time period, your family, even the evolutionary reasons why we develop false beliefs, to gain a loyalty to the cave that your tribe is in. So all human beings get a problem, a false belief about reality and the self, and they forget the truth. So we have to go through a learning to remember the truth. And that's one of the arguments we've talked about in the Phaedo, that all learning is a kind of remembering. So it seems like we have two jobs. Well, what if it's the same art that is used to do both? It is the same dialectic, art of the dialectic, that purifies and frees us, and then using that freedom to reach truth. That's very amazing and important, and we've got that from reading the text, from playing the games, and we've been playing the game, the noblest game, the ideal human quest, or the archetype of the human quest. So if that's the art of the logos, we also, or let's stay with the art of the dialectic. That's a cleaner way of talking about it. So if that's the art of the dialectic, then it would stand to reason that we should do a dialectic on the dialectic. If this is our singular focus, then it's important that we don't stay at the level of just trusting Socrates, and we've got good reason to trust him, and it's a starting point, but we can't stay at the level of trust. We have to move to understanding it for ourselves. And this is a principle that we've discovered. Any teacher that just ends with, oh, just trust me, or just believe me, or just have faith, or just have hope, is conning you. Whether they are aware of it or not, they're acting unjustly. They are not functioning as a real teacher. Just like if we talked about becoming a mechanic, if you're an apprentice of a mechanic and you asked a question, why does this thing go there? And he said, just trust me, you would immediately leave because you're not learning for yourself to become a master of the art yourself. So we have to do that. Well, so if that's the case, and we're seeing why it's the case, then if our singular focus and purpose that we can harmonize everything in our soul towards, harmonize every aspect of our psyche towards, if that is focused on the dialectic, then we should not just trust this, but understand this. Which means we should be doing a dialectic on the dialectic. What is the dialectic? What isn't the dialectic? Now, this is important because that's one of those words that have been stolen. Often, because our tradition hasn't picked up Socrates' words until the last decade or so. Some people, like Dr. Grimes, of course, picked it up a lot sooner. But I say that only because in the last 5 to 10 years, we have had a translation of the text, which includes the Greek and has the keywords translated accurately. Most of them, like dianoia, like nous, like ousia, all of these keywords needed to unpack all these puzzles to gain the questions and find the solutions, haven't been available to the mainstream. Well, anyone really. Kind of counter attack to the truth of Socrates, the truth that he is sharing with us. So, and as a result of that, when we use the word dialectic, it's not understood in the way that Socrates is defining it. So people say, oh, you mean a Hegelian dialectic? What's that? Oh, this guy Hegel had a different opinion. He said, well, there is no truth really. It's just one person does one thing, and then there's a counterattack to it. So there's one thing as I have an idea, we'll call that a thesis. And then other people say, no, that's bad. That's the antithesis. And then somehow they get joined together to create a new thing called a synthesis. And that becomes the new thesis. And then there's a rejection of that. Oh no, we don't think that's true. But then these guys' opinions and these guys' opinions mix up to create a new thing. That's Hegelian dialectic, which is mental. It's a bit silly when you think of the fact that just because a lot of people think it doesn't mean it's true. And if someone like Socrates is coming along and laying out the facts for us, dropping some truth bombs on our asses, then all of the rejection in the last 2,500 years to it, saying the opposite, no, philosophy isn't about knowledge, it isn't about understanding, it isn't about an art, it's the opposite, it's about opinions, it's about forcing your beliefs on others through violence and oppression. It's about rejecting the knowability of higher dimensions. That's philosophy. Well, what should we do? Should we take some of this opposite of the truth and mix it in with the truth and take that with us? Doesn't make sense, does it? Like when you start at animal college to become a vet, does your teacher say, well, okay, here is the truth about where puppies come and kittens come from, but let's be fair and take some of your ignorance and some of the truth, and let's teach that and use that in the art of veterinary medicine. That would be a bit mental. We would say to that, and we would say to that,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't swallow that. I don't want to eat that monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Thank you, Joe Rogan. So, that's not what dialectic is. That's side B. And what is dialectic? That's something we have been developing as we go by pulling out the key terms of the text, looking at the structure of the text, looking for puzzles, looking for patterns, developing questions, developing hypotheses, learning how he says we should develop a hypothesis. And also, some of us have watched the introduction to the Parmenides. That's another series we have on the channel. The beginning of Socrates' journeys, Parmenides says it's the dialectic that you have to learn. Parmenides' student Zeno says, hey, the many are not aware that it's the discursive procession through all beings, the dialectic. That's what it makes. That is what makes it possible to find the truth, hold on to the truth. And here's a good quote from Parmenides. Permit the ideas of real being, of the true earth to be. Keep your mind fixed upon all of the counterattacks or objections. Define each one of the particular ideas. That's where to turn your dianoia. Allow that the idea of each one of the real beings is always of the self. So, a higher cause even to being. This is the power of dialectics. And another quote from the beginning of Socrates' journey as a philosopher from his early teacher Parmenides that has a key term that has been repeated through this text is the term being collecting yourself together. Here is the quote from Parmenides: collect thyself together. This has been repeated all the way through the Phaedo. So what he learned at the beginning of the life, Socrates was able to learn, master, demonstrate by the end of his life, which might explain for us why Socrates is so confident that he has completed his work and he is not going to go into the underworld part of the realm of being and come back again being trapped in the prison of reincarnation. He's going to a better place, the surface of the realm of being, just like a fish doesn't know that there's a surface of the realm of earth, of the physical earth. What we're calling the sixth dimension, with better men and gods who are fellow travelers and guides. Better men and gods than you will find here. But why can he be so confident that he's done his work? Well, he seems to have integrated this. Collect thyself together, says Parmenides to Socrates, by exercising more in that way that appears useless to the multitude, to the many, the dialectic. This is called by them empty talk. If you do not, while you are still young, the truth will utterly elude you. And that's what Socrates has been saying we really seek. We seek the truth and we seek phronesis. Those were the two that he's been talking about. Now you can say, well, the truth, what leads us to the truth? The dialectic, as it says here. What about phronesis? That's where the virtues come in. Doing it. Not just the education defining the dialectic, but doing it, demonstrating it. That's the virtues. Seeking it with courage, desiring it with temperance or sound-mindedness. Using it in your thinking with wisdom. Functioning through it at all times with justice. These are the virtues. So if we have our definition and our virtues demonstration, our education, and our nurture, both of those come together into a state of being called phronesis. This is what we seek. This is the upgrade. The unity of definition and demonstration, phronesis, a certain state of self, and mastery of the dialectic together, and integration. So mastery of the dialectic through your education, integration into your state of being through your nurture. That's phronesis. Utilizing your direct experience, because the dialectic is greater than trust, but it's also a springboard into nous, the ability to know that higher realm, to separate from the body and fly on over to the realm of being, check out what's going on. Keep in mind, let's not get distracted by where most people go. Just like we said to Hegel, hey, we're not going to get distracted by what most people think the dialectic is, or synthesizing the antithesis of most people. We're not interested in what most people think. In fact, that's Cebes. Cebes is more interested in what most people think. Simmias wants to understand it for himself. Socrates says you better understand it for yourself. In fact, right at the beginning of Socrates' life, Parmenides, or when he's like 19, philosophical life, Parmenides says, Socrates, your problem is you are still young and you give heed to the opinions of human beings. So we don't want to do that, because as we saw in that previous quote, most people, the many, consider the dialectic useless, a waste of time, empty talk. And we can see why, because we've done a dialectic on philosophy. The people who they learn from say you can't know the meaning of life. You can't understand the understandability of reality. You can't directly know it. You can't experience the realm of being. You can't separate yourself from the body. You can't develop an art, therefore, of the soul, an actual singular art of spirituality, which would also mean, on one level down, an actual objective art of governing. Because if that's what we're here for, organizing society to create the conditions for that would be how to govern artfully. So of course, if people said you can't have those things, then they would consider doing it a waste of time. Just like if people thought there is no art of medicine, you just pray and hope that God cures your illness, then somebody saying to their family, I'm going to medical college, they would laugh at them. So you're wasting your time. Learning the art of medicine, the understandability, the ideal of the human body, how to bring people to benefit, that is a waste of time, because we believe there are no such things as art, as understandability, as an ideal of human health. So it's the same thing, only now, thankfully, we have gotten past that and we understand there is an art of medicine, just like there's an art of being a mechanic. You can't just wildly throw your hammer at things inside your engine and hope it to work. So too, the next stage of our human evolution is to apply that same principle to what is most meaningful. That's the art of the logos, or the art of the dialectic. The next stage in human evolution. And we've been seeing, well, because we have the art of computer science, let's say, technology, we better quick smart learn this art, because we have the technology to bring our species to the end, to extinction. And there might be a good reason why the human race exists, and a good purpose that it plays that we might want to keep. And also we might want to end the suffering, the irrational, unnecessary suffering, while making this a more harmonious, rational, friendly planet to live on, where we can pursue our purpose in a fun way. And if we don't, well, we have the technology that if we don't purify our ignorance might play out catastrophically to end the planet or end the human race. So it's time for our evolution, let's say. But whether or not the rest of the many pick up on this, it's most important that we do it ourselves for our own soul, for our own development and our own progression out of the chains of our physical senses and the imprisonment of our repeating cycles of reincarnation. That's what Socrates has been helping us to understand. Isn't that amazing? Confetti. My confetti. No confetti. Confetti. Where's my confetti? Oh, okay, we'll take balloons. Yay for balloons. If I do this, there should be confetti. Okay, there's just balloons. All right, so there's a kind of activity called the dialectic that's called empty talk by those who haven't yet been introduced to this, or because our human race has to reach this next stage of human evolution. It's taken us 2,500 years to listen to Socrates, but it's important that we do it now, and even for our soul. So with that in mind, the dialectic is a kind of focus with natural motivation and interest on what is most meaningful to us, done rationally, while being aware, as Parmenides says, of any counterattacks that come in. Maybe at the same time doing the dialectic to them to understand their cause so we can be free of them. So we can maintain our singular unified focus on our one purpose, mastering the art of the dialectic. All of those things are the conditions for meditation. All of those are the conditions for what meditation is. Now, what happens when you have sustained meditation? You can unite with it, provided you've been wondering about, having a question on, having sustained focus on an idea that has an existence in being and is therefore able to be united with or knowable, what we call ousia. So beauty has an ousia, the ousia of beauty itself, or we call them self terms: self-beauty, self-justice, self-equality, the true self of the earth. Any of these things, if our dialectic has been on them, we can go from dialectic or meditation to contemplation. Hooray! Where we can unite with it. That's that cognitive function above even dianoia or understanding, called knowing. Now, of course, knowing, we don't think of this when we use the English word, so we use the word nous. You can know it, noesis. And thankfully, we've reached noesis through the art of the dialectic, through understanding, so we can understand what it is we're experiencing. We've purified our false beliefs of it, so we won't run away scared from it because we think it's the devil. And we have purified our false beliefs of ourselves. I'm not good enough for ultimate beauty. Well, if you think that, you're not going to be able to unite with ultimate beauty. So because the dialectic is applied to not just our focus on being, but also we apply it to our problems to purify our false, usually religious, cultural beliefs about it. Oh, it's scary, God is an angry, vengeful person, or Satan is up there, or all this sorts of thing that can make us afraid of it. As well as our false beliefs, our pathologos about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I am unworthy. I am a sinner. My presence, nobody likes me. My presence makes everything worse. So I don't want to be in the presence of the divine because that would make the divine worse. By the way, in our lives, when we reach our meaningful goals or being in the presence of beauty, the same kinds of beliefs will come up to block us. So we have opportunities to learn, to discover patterns, and apply that dialectic to the feelings and blocks and inner dialogue that limits us. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, etc. To practice the art of the dialectic and purify ourselves from them. Because the dialectic culminates in the direct experience, nous. And you want to be ready for it, prepared for it. Socrates finished his speech about the true earth by saying, I'm going to take a bath. It began by saying, this is a purification ritual in honor of the god Apollo, the god of philosophy. That's why Socrates is not being murdered straight away. We have to keep the city pure. He says, spend your time doing this. That is a preparation and a purification. So we apply the dialectic to be nice and ready, nice and pure, nice and well bathed, wash away all of the false beliefs, all pathologos, the special kind of unsuspected false beliefs that we carry about the nature of reality or the self or beauty. All of those ideas in being, the self-usia ideas, but specifically about our thinking, our self and reality. Purify those false things while also using the dialectic to gain an understanding of what is true, so that when we get there, we're ready for it, we don't run away from it, which would be a kind of reincarnation, wouldn't it? You go into this higher realm and you run away back into your everyday problems, back into your regular stuff. A kind of reincarnation. But we don't want to do that. We want to stay in it. Socrates says this is what philosophy is: the practice of collecting yourself together outside of your body, both now and in the future. And while out there, while you're out of your body, doing something else, collecting yourself while out of the body. Not just to separate, but while you're out of the body. So there's a kind of practice we can do while we are out of our body. So, purification and the perfection through the practice of the dialectic, culminating in something we call contemplation, that we can understand, not run away from, but also because we've been practicing the dialectic heaps and heaps and heaps, ideally only doing this if it's our purpose, then we can, that's called the virtues, the nurture. We can not just understand it and not just, not be afraid of it, but integrate it into our way of being because we've been practicing the dialectic all the time. That's the virtues, that's the nurture, that's the preparation. So what do? Well, we can therefore integrate it into our way of being. We training our soul to integrate it. If we've been practicing the dialectic anyway, now that we can see the realm of being or the true earth, we know what to do with it. Oh, this is beauty itself. This is the thing I've been understanding. And if I'm using the dialectic with my friends, I need to judge whether their answers are true or not. This is the paradigm of truth. If I'm using the dialectic to judge whether or not my former teachers were just by passing on these false beliefs, by treating me a certain way, where I walked away with a false belief of myself, this is my paradigm of justice. This is self-justice. So I can be better at the dialectic. If the dialectic also is about what's good, this is goodness itself. If the arguments of the dialectic have to be not only just and necessary, but are convincing also because they're beautiful, this is beauty itself. So it's like you've been learning medicine and then you see the perfect body, the perfect healthy body. Now you can use it. So we've got an understanding, we're not afraid, we're not going to run away. Also we can, because we've been practicing it, we can integrate it. And all of those things, what's our understanding? The dialectic. What do we use to purify ourselves from what's false? The dialectic. What have we been training in or practicing in all the time while we're here? The dialectic. How do we integrate our experience of reality itself, the true earth or true being? How do we integrate it? It's going to be the paradigm or the ideal that we use in the dialectic. So when we ask questions about what's true or what's just, this is what we're talking about. We have not just an understanding of truth and justice, but a direct experience of it. So our education, our purification, our nurturing, and our integration into our activities all are the dialectic. It's for all of them, which is wonderful. So we say hooray. And we have some confetti too. Because that means we don't have to be split focused. And as we were saying, one of the reasons for the dialectic is it unifies your focus. And as we saw in the text, one of the definitions for virtue is a harmony of the soul. In other words, all parts of a chord have to be focused on the same idea or same note. Well, if it's a chord, it's not the same note, but the same chord. That's what harmony is. You need a singular focus. So another analogy would be in an orchestra. Everyone in the orchestra, even if there are many parts, have to be focused on the same conductor. And even that conductor should be looking at the same piece of music that they're all looking at. So the fact that it's all the same thing, our understanding, our purification from our fears or what might prevent us from getting into it fully, our practice of it, our nurturing of the virtues, and also our integration into a kind of activity, it's all the dialectic. So that's our sheet of music, or that's the conductor, meaning we can unify our task, recognize anything else as a distraction or a tangent or a manifestation of a block. So whenever that happens, take a note of it, put it in a different notebook, because that will be material to do a dialectic on, to find the cause of our blocks. Just like in the dialectic, you need a paradigm to judge what's true, so too you need a paradigm to recognize deviations. So anything other than the dialectic will be a distraction or a tangent or evidence of a block or that pathologos we need to purify ourselves from. Just like a doctor not only knows the ideal body, but can, because he knows the ideal, the singular ideal of the healthy body, and his focus is on that, he can recognize any deviation and recognize anything else as a kind of illness. And there are many, many illnesses. So this is important for anyone with an art. This is the ideal. This is the difference. This is an ideal working car. Anything different from that I can diagnose as a problem with the car, says someone with the art of being a mechanic. So too, by having a unified singular focus, not only does it create the conditions for meditation and therefore contemplation and therefore nous and therefore direct apprehension of being, it gives us a singular focus to recognize any problems that we may have, because we need to, just like we're reading the text to collect terms we can apply the dialectic to, we need to also be collecting terms to apply the dialectic to in our problems. The purification, the midwifery, where do we get those terms from? Well, for the excellence or the perfection, we get them from the text. For our purification, where do we get them from? This. Anything that comes up to direct us to anything other than this is a problem. This is our purpose. This leads us to our greatest knowledge, our greatest understanding, the greatest experience, truth itself, Renaissance itself, the apprehension of beauty itself, which is experienced as bliss. Taoists might call it the experience of enlightenment. You might call it a peak experience. The youth call it peaking out sometimes. That's a funny word that they might use to use it. Being in the zone. a reflection of it. So we have the ideal that we can use for the dialectic, either to guide our reasoning up, our dialectic up, or to recognize deviations. And then when we do philosophical midwifery and pull those pieces together, all those key terms, key words, key patterns, all of those blocks or deviations, when we finally judge it, when we apply the art of the logos to say, you are sick, get out of here, we'll say, hey, you are sick because you are not just. You were not actually wise. You were not actually beautiful. You had the image of beauty. We apply the art of the logos, and having that experience of nous, contemplation, allows us to do that even better, even betterer, or with greater excellence. So that contemplation adds to the excellence of that art, the very art we're here to do, the art of the dialectic. And it's a kind of art we take with us. So the point is, if we can experience that nous or separate the soul from the body, we don't want to just look at what's happening in the physical world. We don't even want to just look at what's happening in the underworld of being beneath the surface, where most people are going, what they're going through, the various places they go to based on how they've lived, and then the reincarnations they choose. This guy comes back as a wolf. This guy comes back as a bee. Who cares? We don't want to be following the opinions of the many. There's a quote from Parmenides to Socrates. We want to get over this problem that Socrates had when he was young, caring about what the opinions of human beings are doing. What Seebees, we could call a Seebees type person, going with the majority of what people think, the majority of the ignorance. Who cares if most people are stuck in prison of reincarnation? That's not for us. Who cares if most people think philosophy is just about fighting or opinions? That's not for us. We don't care about that. We don't want to stay imprisoned. We want to gain freedom. We want to gain truth. Ultimately, we want to gain phronesis, which does involve us learning the word, because it's not in English. So how do we know we seek it unless we do the work? That's what we've been doing here. So we've done a lot of work, a lot of puzzling to learn a new word and realize, oh, that's what we've been after this whole time. And dialect is what we use to get it. So, separating from the third dimensional world, we can call that the fourth dimension of the soul. Checking out using it to check out what's happening in the realm of being with most people, we could call that underworld the fifth dimension. But Socrates says, just as people who've never separated from their body. Right. Thank you. In the chat, I am a gadfly to society, right? Socrates calls himself a gadfly because he's very small compared to the opinions of the many or what the many are doing. But he can, like a gadfly can bug a horse, really annoy a horse by asking them questions. And now we're saying, well, yes, it's annoying, but what he is doing is the art of the dialectic. Asking kinds of questions that it would be annoying to people who are steadfast in their ignorance and haven't yet realized there is a purpose to life. There is this art of the dialectic, and there is a truth that is understandable and knowable, and beyond that, even integrated into your state of self, called phronesis. That's the dialectic. Now, if we ignore what the many are doing, then Socrates says we escape the prison of reincarnation and we go to this other place that we are calling, just for ease of language, the sixth dimension, the surface of the realm of being. Just like a fish might see a person on the surface of the planet and realize, oh my God, there's a whole different society of humans. I thought it was just everything under the ocean. I've only ever experienced things on the surface through the ocean. Just as, in our soul, we've only ever experienced things of our earth through our physical senses. Getting wings on our soul, that we do from practicing the dialectic, that's the method. The self the self-study of philosophy, the exercise of philosophy, Socrates calls it, which is itself the one true spiritual tradition, which is curious. When we do get those wings, even in the realm of being, there is something like that fish. Most people go to a certain level of being, from which they receive some sort of judgment, rewards and punishments, and then reincarnate. But Socrates says, you know what? There's a whole different habitation on the surface of the realm of being. That's a metaphor. There's a different level. Socrates says, that's where I'm going, and I've got reason to trust that and be of good hope and faith, good cheer. But he says those people, the better men who've completed their work here and better gods than you find here, he then at the end of the Phaedo says they are fellow travelers and guides, meaning they're going somewhere. So where are they going? Not only that, if they are going somewhere, if they're traveling somewhere, what are they going to use? Well, if the only thing we take with us is our education and nurture, or the art of the dialectic, it sounds like that's what we need. And if the dialectic is literally the map of understanding everything in our three-dimensional world, it's the map used to do our spiritual task, it's the map used for psychotherapy or philosophical midwifery, purify or free ourselves from our problems. It's even the map used in other arts, songwriting, geometry, Euclid's geometry. You can see the dialectic in play. Literally anything. Well, of course it has to be, because it's the paradigm. If the dialectic is the map for our spiritual perfection and purification, and on a lesser level, all of the other lesser arts like music and things, then it would seem that maybe it's also the map for what they are doing in the sixth dimension, how they are relating to each other. Do you think if you meet people who have escaped the cycles of reincarnation, not just experienced eternity, but are staying in the realm of eternity, never to incarnate into the physical world, do you think they're going to be talking about how Instagram famous they are, or how many Bugattis they had, or how popular or rich they were? No. What are they going to be talking about? The nature of reality, of self, meaning, cause, dimensions, higher dimensions. Do you think they're just going to be throwing their opinions at each other and fighting about it like humans do? Of course not. That would be stupid. And we've had, thousands and thousands of years of stupid suffering, torture, bloodshed, exploitation, fascism, capitalism that we have suffered through, to tell us this is what's going to happen if you don't have the art of the dialectic. We are living a dialectic of side B. What would follow if we don't, as a species, have an art? The art of dialectic. This. Opinions, belief, fascism, fighting about opinions, contention, human ills, lovers of fighting rather, philonikos. Anti-logos people who shut down the logos and strut around like they're smart. Look how smart I am when I shut down the logos. We know this because we have social media. We know that the most ignorant and least informed people, their currency is to find content creators who are doing something and to crap on them, to say that's bad, you suck, you stink. They can't create themselves. They don't create the logos. They don't do the dialectic. They don't do what we're talking about. They're anti-logos. That's what Socrates calls them. That's his word. And we know this. Every time there's, some beautiful person doing something beautiful on social media, there's some gross, self-entitled, angry, bitter, often man, crapping on them. This is why society is bad. You stink. You're not good enough. Men are better. You are the wrong race. All that kind of stuff. And these people can't create. Their currency is anti-logos. all they can do is shut down anything that's not their own sick opinions, pathologos opinions, because they were not educated in a way where they learned this. In fact, nobody was. But it's only in the last 5 years have we had a translation where we can actually see the word anti-logos. Past translations are not going to have. Let's look at it. Let's do it right now. Let's find where he actually said the word anti-logos. And let's compare it to all of the other past traditions that all of the other studiers of philosophy would have had access to. So here we go. Okay, so those who are philonikos, so that's lovers of fighting or debate or contention. Like, what do people like on, what gets clicks on the social media, on the internet? Contention. Hey, what political figures get elected? Those who have a contentious attitude. Gets you likes, gets you looks. The word is philonikos. Lovers of fighting, lovers of debating, lovers of contention. Now, these people don't know whether the logos maintains phronesis or ousia, phronotin ousia. So ousia, the state of the realm of being, or phronesis, the integration into the learning, integration into the ideal virtue that we do all this work to have. So these people are only interested in presenting things that others can believe them. That's right. They want the clicks. They're contentious. They don't know that there is a goal called phronesis that requires the mastery of the art of the dialectic and the experience of the realm of being and the understanding that there is a understandable logos. No. They just care about others believing them. Socrates says, I'm different because I'm only eager that myself thoroughly believes anything I have to say. That's all I care about. Behold the greedy way I use the logos. But on the other hand, if what I say does hit upon being true, surely it has to persuade in a beautiful way. But that's secondary. Now, we want the word anti-logos. So let's look for where it was in the text. It's such a fantastic word. It describes it so well. I don't think even this translator called it anti-logos. So we're doing a search for the word logos in the Greek, which obviously it's all the way through. Another indication of what we're talking about. Logos, of course, is key, and it's all the way through the text, but it hasn't been translated as logos. Sometimes they call it speech, sometimes understanding, sometimes words, sometimes language. It means all of those things and a lot more. So, we're not blaming people who don't understand what philosophy is or claim it's the opposite. But we're not blaming them, we're understanding why, but we're also not being nice, polite, ignorant people and pretending that just because they think it's true or just because they have a problem, it's rude to say it. It's very, very important. A doctor wouldn't say, oh, you got cancer, but I'm not going to say it because that's rude. Oh my goodness. But that's what they'll say. That's an anti-logos. That's rude of you to say that I am wrong, or that's arrogant of you. Imagine if a patient goes into a doctor with the art of medicine and says, it's arrogant for you to assume that I have cancer. How dare you? I was just eating a succulent Chinese meal. Right? That would be crazy. But this is the kind of language that we have to recognize is the dialectic that follows, or the consequences that follow, if we don't have the art, or we don't even know that there is an art. Now I'm trying to find the anti-logos. I think it's used once, which, if it's, by the way, if you're reading a Platonic text, something from Socrates, and he uses the word once, it will often be the key to unlock the whole text. Just like if you're playing a video game, if there's one special area that's really, really important, there'll often be only one key that you have to find. Now, the word irrational is a logos, which is cool, but we're looking for the anti-logos. That's such a good, right, irrational again. It's such a good description of the currency. See, our currency in the dialectic is another irrational. Our currency is the logos. The dialectic is the artful use of the logos. So we talked about, okay, let's say we do all this work and we go to that better place, not the underworld where they're still having experiences and running around in ignorance and no one's really talking to each other. The only talking is, I'm sorry for murdering your family. Can I come back into the cycle of reincarnation? I don't like being stuck in Tartarus. That seems to be the only communication there. There's no artful communication. And of course, again, our society currently doesn't have that. If you've ever seen parliament houses, they just yell at each other like goddamn children, screaming. Why? Because they're not interested in the art. So our currency, or what we use in the dialectic, is the logos. That's what the dialectic that we're mastering uses. The currency of those who are opposite is the anti-logos. I'm trying to find it in the text. So maybe our translator did call it the anti-logos. There's so many times that the word logos is used that it's hard to find it in the Greek. Okay. Let's just look for anti-logos. Okay. Can't find it yet, but so we're looking for the anti-logos, which is curious because we see that what we're looking for in the text is the logos. So we pull out the key terms and things of the logos, which we use for the dialectic, which we said today is the activity that brings together our education, our nurture. Socrates has been saying it's only these things that we take with us. It's applied to our problems. It can remove our fears, remove our fears, so we don't run away, which is a kind of reincarnation, by the way. Don't run away. But we can also integrate it. That's how we integrate our highest experiences of nous. Integrate nous or being. Now, we've talked about this removal of fears is tied to the pathologos. So there's a series that we've just started. We've got one episode up so far, pathologos, on the philosophical midwifery, the use of the dialectic to remove our pathologos, which is a fundamental false belief about those things, about this stuff, or self reality. So that's the pathologos. But then there's a third kind called the anti-logos, which is the contradiction, which is the opposite or contradiction. Of the logos. These are two different things. So we can say, well, the pathologos are usually unsuspected, but these are the ones that the fascists, or we call them today to be polite, conservatives. Oh, confetti. That's what the conservatives or the fascists appeal to. Hey, things were always were better back when you were a child, back when you were in your household. All of your racist prejudices or sexist prejudices or desire not to improve or progress, that's good. All right? And this is what blocks us. This was what creates our fear of the logos, or our fear of reality, or our fear of the nature of the divine, or our fear of progression, our fundamental false beliefs about ourself or reality. But the anti-logos is different. It's simply a contradiction. So we've been talking about Socrates in this text gave us information about the vices and the virtues. The virtues, or the logos, or let's say logos and dialectic, is the ladder up. So we were talking about that's what we use to reach our destiny or our purpose, and we call that perfection. Now, not knowing that isn't vice. He talked about vice having a certain level. To be good at vice, okay, if the virtue of temperance or sound-mindedness is to desire this at all times, then you've got to master your other desires. You desire for wealth, for fame, for cookies, physical desires, sexual experiences, physical desires. You have to master those so that you can desire what you're here for, to master the art of the dialectic. But not having that doesn't make you a really vice-filled person, unjust person. But if you can master some of your desires so that you can do this other desire really well, that's vice. Which is curious, because we could say, oh wait, he's got his drinking under control and he doesn't eat too many cookies and he's not out womanizing. But so that guy's a pretty good guy. Well, actually, he's got that mastery to better pursue his gambling problem or his embezzlement problem, or whatever it is, to master some of your desires only to be mastered by another. This is vice. So this isn't the absence or the anti-logos, it's the shadow. This is important, and we talked about earlier in the series the meme debate. Would a woman rather run into a man or a bear in the woods? Well, a bear doesn't have the shadow. He's just a back and forth of opposites, logos or anti-logos. He's just hungry or well-fed. He's either going to eat you or he isn't. But a man also has the shadow, the pathologos, the vices. So he might really think he's entitled to do all this terrible, terrible desire, and he has a mastery of his, like, he's not going to eat you or whatever. So he's got a mastery of his physical desires. But he has this potential vice to falsely believe something is true about reality that he is entitled to, or he deserves. That kind of addiction is vice. So that's why in this meme debate, most women would rather, if they were alone in a forest, run into a bear than they would a man. Because, yeah, just imagine. Which is also Peter's principle. A lot of people spend their life, if they're not learning the art of the logos, the art of the dialectic, this shadow has more force than reality itself. That keeps us imprisoned. The art of the dialectic and the logos allows us to discover the causes of our problems, the repeating patterns, just like we look for repeating patterns in the text that we read, repeating certain language or terms, just like we're looking for certain key language and terms. Right now we're looking for the logos and the anti-logos, key terms that repeat, thematically represented as a repetition through time, have an organization, has a direction. All of these things that is present in the Phaedo that allows us to play the human quest, the ultimate hero's journey of mastering the Phaedo, is playing out in real time in our problems. Every human being. Same thing. Terms, repetition of patterns, themes, manifesting in different areas or divisions. Your relationships, your job, your sport, everything, your school. So it's the same thing. The only difference is, this is the principle, terms are different, but relations stay the same. It's the same dialectic applied to different terms. That's the pathologos. And until a human soul is lucky enough to come across the Phaedo with the Balboa translation, with the actual terms needed to do this, until their soul has lucky enough or has done well enough in previous lifetimes to come across that, they will be a slave to their fate. That's why it's called fate. So we can see the shadow of the ladder looks like train tracks. You're on the train tracks. Your inevitable negative conclusion. That's called fate. That's what we have to purify ourselves from. That's the pathologos. The anti-logos is not that. It's just shutting down this. Oh, you think that there is an understandability? That's stupid. Why do you think that? Oh, well, you know, we started by trusting Socrates, and then we developed our own understanding to see the logos for ourselves. Oh, Socrates. Oh, no, that's dumb. What do you mean? Oh, no, he was born 2,500 years ago. He didn't know anything about modern science, so we can dismiss it. That's the anti-logos. Now, that's really cool because we can see this is the currency that's very easy. So there are content creators on social media and things that create beautiful things. And of course, it's not perfect. No one's perfect. Socrates said that himself. There are very few really, really tall dogs or really, really tiny dogs. Part of the art is recognizing that. Ain't no one perfectly ideal as a human being. Maybe Socrates. I don't know. But almost no one, very rarely are people worthless. So maybe there are some Socrates and some, really, really bad tyrants. But most people are somewhere in between. That's part of the art. So of course, anyone creating or trying to create with the logos of some description is not going to be perfect. But the currency that a lot of people who don't create, because the voice that shuts them down is so strong that they just imitate that. A shadow is an imitation or a reflection. They imitate the person who shut them down, so they shut on other people. And by the way, that's the whole red pill, conservative, right-wing, what seems to be the most engaging channels on YouTube. Fox News and Daily Wire and all of these conservative fascists and stuff. That's all they do. The conservative parties, they don't actually do anything. They don't propose a way of understanding and solving human and societal problems. They just hate on people. That's anti-logos. But they think if they do that, that gives them the appearance of knowledge. Socrates is literally saying, if you don't learn this, these people will manipulate you, and you will trust them when you shouldn't. And you'll end up hating people or hating the logos itself. But really, it's because you haven't learned the art of the logos, the art of the dialectic. So they do. They just crap on people. It's terrible. I hate being on social media. It's like, oh, that's a really beautiful dance. Or that's a really cool creation. Or that's a really beautiful idea. And then all the comments are like a typical looking, bitter, usually middle-aged, older man saying, this is what's wrong with the world, or this is, you suck, you stink, or this is no good. And often those people appeal to the youth, like, so Andrew Tate, who just hates on everyone, appeals to 10 to 18-year-old boys usually, because they seek this, but without the logos and the dialectic being shared, the anti-logos is, oh, this is what is truth. This is what is philosophy. Just hating on things. So that's cool. Gives us a way of doing side B, because the dialectic has side A, what it is. If X is, let's put it in the right spot. If X is, and it has if X isn't. That's side B. Now, the more we do a dialectic, the more we can see, oh, hang on a second, is means being. So we can do a dialectic on that. So we can say exists eternally, exists, eternal, immortal, eternal, etc. Pure. So this is what we mean by exist. So the more we do the dialectic, the better we can understand the dialectic, which is cool. It sort of like turns upon itself. Exists, pure, immortal, being, and so on. Who knew that doing dream work wakes up your dreams? Good question. Did you just discover that? So in chat, you've been doing dream work recently. You've been having your dreams have been changing? How have they changed? Having one almost every night now. Are they changing to in response to your reflection, or are they adding more content to your reflection? Are they clarifying your conclusions, or helping you to adjust the previous conclusions? In other words, oh, they have, yes, and there are people in them. Is it like there is a dialectic happening between your dream analysis and the new dreams that follow, to add content if it's right, or to add content, or to confirm when you're right, or to correct when you're wrong, that sort of things? Awesome. So we can even have a dialectic with our dreams. That's cool. So one of those key terms that we do the dialectic to is the anti-logos. And it was such a cool expression because it really nails what people nowadays, without the art of the logos, thinks philosophy is, thinks being wise is. and I was pretty sure it was around this. Whoops. Oh my goodness. I was pretty sure it was around this idea of contentious attitude. Somewhere around here. Right, no techne, so there's no art. So it should be around here. They say that the people who are anti-logos or lovers of fighting say there's no soundness or stability in reality, in being, or the logos, so there's no dialectic, of course, and there's no art. And art of the logos. Here we go, 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 here it is. I'll make it pink. They spend their time contradicting the logos. Right. So in chat, our friend Collins pointed out, yes, contradicting the logos. That was our translation here. So if we go to 90C, that's a really cool word and a key term that's used once. And often, if it's used once, it'll be a key term to unlock something. So, as we're saying, our job is to do a dialectic on the dialectic and to practice the dialectic and desire it. And, you know, it's a unification of our desires, our education, our nurture, our virtues, and so on and so on. Then if we're doing a dialectic on the dialectic, we could say, well, hang on a second. Dialectic on the dialectic, we will end up saying what it is and what it isn't. And of course, there are the four categories. Self itself, let's use a different color. Definition, self to others, definition, demonstration, definition, others to others, or division. And then from those divisions, we find a key term. One way of going from division to synthesis is to synthesis, analysis, is to take a key word from those divisions that unifies everything, that unifies all of those different divisions. Now that key word might be, in this side B, might be anti-logos. So what isn't the dialectic? Well, we could say it's opinion, or philonikos, lovers of fighting, lovers of contention, drama, or lovers of debate, fighting, contention. Then we talk about how it functions. So how it functions would be something like, it says there's no logos, there's nothing sound or firm. So it says nothing, let's zoom in a little bit. Nothing sound or firm in logos, reality, or and no art of logos. That's just from what we just read. And then there would be division. So how do those people having been, so this is what the non-dialectician would say to others. Now, what would those others say to other others? They might start wars, they might fight, they might hate the logos. That's what Socrates said. Hate the logos. Don't reach being, reach truth. And being now that's from the text. Let's pull it up in the text. So what are we doing? We're arranging into a certain pattern and structure called the dialectic all of the key terms and expressions from the text itself. So here we are. So there's no soundness or stability in the realities of the logos, and there are no rules of the art. They will spend their time hating and reviling in the logos. So we missed that term, reviling. So we can say hate. So we can go back and improve it from the text. Hate and reviling. Hating and reviling. So notice the terms from the text. If we have problems that come up, we pull out the terms from the problems. If we have dreams, we pull out the terms from the dreams, and we apply the same dialectic to it. That's what we've been talking about in chat just right now. Hating and reviling the logos, and thus deprived of truth and the beings truth of beings and knowledge. So we can even take that. Truth and being and knowledge. So we can say being and knowledge. So we did all right from memory, knowledge, but having the text is so important because we're adding more to it that is literally from the text. Now, that's division, or how those others would relate to other areas of their life. Now, how would those others here relate back to philosophy? Whoops, shite. Okay, so we added knowledge because that was missed out here. So we've got what dialectic on dialectic. What if it doesn't exist? It's just opinion. It's just a love of contention. Dialectic is a way of debating. How does it function? They say, so how does these dialecticians that don't actually exist, the opposite of dialectic, how would they function to others? They say things like, there's nothing sound or firm in the logos or in reality, and there's no art of the logos. Stop wasting your time, you useless philosophers, with your nonsense talk. Okay? Now, having been affected by those supposed experts in college or with a degree or on Fox News or on the Red Pill networks or on the millions of finance bro or self-help or alpha male podcasts that get a lot of clicks and those sorts of things. How do those people having been affected relate to other things? So that's others to others. They will fight each other. They will hate the logos or revile the logos, and they will not reach truth and being and knowledge. So as a result of all that, how would they relate back to dialectic itself? So that's synthesis. So how can we take all of this and synthesize it to one idea? That's synthesis. And then use that synthesis to relate it back to the beginning to see what we defined at the beginning in a new way. That's analysis. Synthesis analysis is another way of saying others back to the thing itself. Well, we said one key word that seems to synthesize all of this is anti-logos. They're anti-logos people. But we can jump back into the text and say, What does he say? They'll be deprived of truth of beings and knowledge. This is a pitiful state of affairs. We have to guard against this condition. And is there anything else in the text that will unify it all? And a sick condition happens. So it's a sick condition. Anything else that would unify or synthesize all of this? There is no greater defect. So a sick condition on the greatest defect of the soul. Anti-logos. Greatest defect. Sick condition. So that was from the text. Key words and key phrases that were in the kind of area, but were not structured. Like, it's not like 1 and then 2 and then 3. We have to do the work. We have to puzzle. We have to look for these things, and we have to organize it. This is the training of the dialectic. Okay, so we've synthesized it, but then we have to apply it back to the self. So can we use this expression? Anti-logos, greatest defect, or the sick condition of soul, to better understand the people who claim to be philosophers or dialecticians or knowers. Yes. So we started with a simple definition. They are people who love their opinions. Right? Mainstream news, they're all about dumb opinions from whatever political party or corporate overlord they serve. Or whatever fascists or racists the YouTube channel is trying to get clicks and money from. Or whatever opinions that are religious, that the people who make a lot of money from religions happen to appeal to the opinions of Christians if they're in the middle of America, Muslims if they're in the Middle East, Mormons if they're in Utah. They wouldn't be making much money if they weren't appealing to their opinions. Right? They're also lovers of contention. They think being a dialectician is to fight people. Have you ever seen those YouTube channels where they talk to someone who's like a imam or a Christian scholar or something, and they say, hey, it seems there are some problems with the logic of your faith that causes this harm. Let's understand why you believe them. And we know what they do? They love contention. They say, you shut up. No, it doesn't say that. Our book doesn't treat women badly. Our book always tells the truth. Our religion is the best religion. We are the chosen people. We are going to fight you. Lovers of contention, Philonikos. So we started with that. That's an easy to see definition from the text that we can also relate to our own world and also within ourselves. There are certain false beliefs that we might blindly defend and want to shut down the conversation when they come up. Especially to ourselves. Hey, you can't read this text, you suck. Do I suck? I'm actually really good at... No, you can't say you're good at anything. That's arrogant. Shut up. All right, so as above, so below. Human race, society, religions, family, culture, but ultimately for ourselves. It's for ourselves, our own dialectic that we have with ourselves and with our daemon and with our dreams. Okay, so what we defined, we now have a greater understanding of because we've gone through this process. So this thinking that knowledge or being a dialectician is having opinions and being able to debate, we also now understand is anti-logos. Oh, you're the anti-logos. That's what you are. I can see you more clearly. Also, you have the greatest defect or the sick condition of the soul. You have a greatest defect. You lovers of opinion and lovers of debate and fighting and defending your own opinions or prejudices or racism or nationalism or patriotism, You have the greatest defect of the soul. And you are just haters or anti-logos people. So this is the benefit of going through both A and B, but also going through the dialectic. You see what you started with in a greater way. So when we see debate bros or fighters or drama people or people like who have just people arguing with each other, they're not solving problems. No, they never do. News networks don't solve problems. These talk shows never solve problems. These philosophy podcasts never solve problems. These right-wing channels and things don't solve problems. That's frustrating. Why aren't you solving problems? I thought you guys were smart and experts of philosophy and dialectic. Oh, why don't they solve problems? Because they have anti-logos. They can only shut things down. They can only destroy. Oh, maybe that's why these fascists or right-wingers or capitalists are not actually solving anything. That's why the conservatives aren't creating laws to solve problems. Because they can't create, they just shut down. I hate gays, I hate women, I hate immigrants, I hate minorities. Yes, anti-logos. But also we can see that they have the greatest defect or the sick condition of the soul. They are sick-souled people from the text that we can now see and use in our art so that we don't trust them and get manipulated by them. And also, if we get into a position where we can do a dialectic with them, we can benefit them. Just like a doctor can benefit with his art those people who have a sick condition or a defect of the body. And we may never be in that position, and the world may be brought to extinction soon. We may never have the opportunity to share the art with humanity. But for us, we can take it with us out of our cycles of reincarnation into that sixth dimension to meet better men and gods, and use this as our unification of our learning, our education, our nurture, our unification of these things. Logos, the dialectic, unifies these things to take it with us. Oops. With our better men and travelers to go from the sixth to the seventh. So that's an example of the dialectic. That's why we do it, both what it is and what it isn't. So we should be doing this also to side B. What is the dialectic? And that's what we're going to be doing now. Well, that's what we're going to be doing next in the series. It's a kind of training. Now, it's also a kind of preparation for the final section, because Socrates is talking about this true earth and how this is specifically how we can escape the underworld, the inner parts of the realm of being, go to the true surface, the sixth dimension people, and then maybe, so that's what we want to get to, but also it's what we take with us to there to go to the possible seventh. So that's what we're going to be doing now on the channel. So what are we going to be doing? Training. We're going to be preparing. We're going to be bathing our souls. We're going to be removing our sick condition of the soul and perfecting the excellence. So another fun thing about the dialectic is you can take what you conclude over here and apply its inverse over here. So we could say, we could hypothesize that maybe, we have to do it and see at the end, maybe O to S for what dialectic is the best. Maybe it's the best or ideal condition of the soul. So by structuring it in this way, you can shed light on or bring to light on opposites, inverse of each other. Hey, if this is the anti-logos, This might be the masterful art of the art of the logos. So if this is the anti-logos, this could be the art of the logos. And it kind of does, right? Isn't the dialectic the art of the logos? Isn't it using the logos in the best kind of a way, in a structured way that can benefit your soul and maybe even others? And maybe even help you go from 6th to 7th dimension? So there's another fun thing. This is how we understand. This is what brings you insights to light. This is also the preparation for Nous. This is also the preparation for Nous. And what we need to integrate that Nous into phronesis. Apply it to our problems and our dreams. We can remove the fears of it. This is our education and nurture. This is what we're doing. And that means that if the last section of the text in the Phaedo is this description of the true earth, if this is a well-written text, and Socrates is saying, this is the whole point of your existence, this is what you're here for, this is your nurturing, this is how you reach truth, this is how you reach phronesis, this is what you'll need to go from the 6th or 7th dimension, this is what you need to solve problems, this is what you need to understand the problems of the world and our true excellence, this is the ideal condition of the soul, this is the greatest defect, the absence of it is the defect of the soul. If this is the whole thing, then it would stand to follow that we won't be able to make sense of this last part until we have it with us. Because if we're not having it with us, we're just like sea bees. Who cares about what the many are doing? The many get stuck in the underworld of the realm of being. They go back and forth. They're imprisoned. The many are like this. The many go through their reincarnation because they have the sick condition of the soul. The many aren't doing their work. That's why they have the sick condition. The many aren't mastering the art of the logos, true dialectic, true philosophy. The many don't have the ideal condition of the soul and therefore have still work to do. That's why they're imprisoned. That's sea bees. We want to be like Simius, who wants to understand for ourselves, recognizes the frailty of most human beings. So, in other words, if we reach the final boss of a game, everything that we had to have done previously is needed to defeat him. It would be a poor game if a level 1 character could defeat the end boss. The boss who's level 100. If we are coming into this last thing like sea bees, the way most people read philosophy, the bad way, the anti-logos way, the sick condition of the soul way, and we that's interesting, that's an interesting belief about what the afterworld is like. Wow. I mean, I don't really believe it. It's just Socrates. He doesn't know what modern philosophers know. That's wrong. That's the sick condition of the soul. You're just listening to opinions that you have from society or religion or your family or your cultural mythology. You are just wanting to fight Socrates rather than wanting to listen and do it. That's how most people read. That's not reading. That's the opposite of reading. Oh, really? That's what happens in the afterworld? Well, that's nice to know. That's not reading. He's saying it's not exactly like this. You've got work to do. Let's read it. He finishes by saying, concern yourself with learning and take pleasure in learning, not the other things, the pleasures of the body or the fashion and the physical adornments of the body. Don't do that. Learn. And you also have to risk that what I am describing about the realm of being is like this way. Is in this way or something like it. Okay, if you are participating in Nous, if you've been doing the work, you probably will insist that it's not literally the case. It's a kind of metaphor, meaning we have to unpack it. Somehow. Risk that it's like this way, and then learn. And keep doing it. If our soul is immortal, you will benefit, as we've shown it is, you will benefit by singing this to yourself, these myths to yourself that I have just spent a long time prolonging the tale talking about. So this big thing I've just given you about the true earth, it's going to be something like this. And if you've got nous, you're going to have to unpack it somehow. And you have to sing that myth to yourself as if it's an incantation. So in other words, if you have picked up what I've been laying down this whole time, don't just trust, develop the art of the dialectic for all the reasons we've been talking about today. Then you have to risk what I'm telling you is a starting point, a belief. Then you have to unpack it because it's like what I'm describing, not is. If you've got intellect, you'll insist it's not literally the case. There's something you have to do. Then you will participate in nous. If you do this, what we are seeing now, so he's saying this is kind of the final boss. You have to have done all of the stages. You have to leveled up the whole way through. Realize that our focus is learning. Realizing learning is to risk this belief, repeat it, and apply the dialectic to it. Realize that this is the true spiritual art. Realize this is how you separate from the body. Realize this is the true practice of philosophy. The dialectic. If you do it, then do it. If you're like CBs, you're not going to read the book. You're going to miss out. But if you do, practice the dialectic, train in the dialectic, and then bring that practice, nurture, and training, education, and nurture, train up in this dialectic, you can apply it to this final boss. And if you do, it will be a kind of incantation. You won't just understand not only the nature of reincarnation, but the nature of the realm of being, the nature of reincarnation, the nature of the ideal soul that you can therefore use as an art, and maybe even the nature of the 6th and 7th dimensions. But it will be an incantation. And he's talked about that as earlier in the text. So this is how we do it. This is how we read. We tie it in with the other times in the text he's talked about incantations. And that's what he says here. What's an incantation? A rite of initiation into the mystic arts. Of course, we want to go from dianoia to nous, physical senses to the eye of the soul, ousia. And what do? That initiation is a purpose. And if you don't, you'll be uninitiated. There's our initiation. Unaccomplished. There's our singular focus he's talking about at the end. And you will reach Hades in a barbarous bog or the mud. When you reach the realm of being, you'll be in the mud. We've been learning about all of the mud and the underworld of Hades or the realm of being. But if you are perfected and purified, the dialectic, you will dwell with the gods. That's the 6th dimension he's been talking about. Therefore, as the saying goes, many are the staff bearers, but few are the true mystics. And those are those who practice philosophy correctly. So this ties in our understanding of what he's talking about at the end, about an incantation. So when we read this first, it was a puzzle. What the heck is he talking about initiation? Because he said it's so important because we've been talking about going to Hades or the realm of being or the true earth. But And if we don't do this, we'll be in the mud. But if we do it, we're actually doing the proper spiritual tradition, and we will be with the gods. We will dwell with the gods. Let's highlight that. So, when we read it the first time, it should have made no sense in that this is super, super important. The rewards are important if we do, and the stakes are super high if we don't, dwelling in the mud. And the other consequence is Socrates saying it's the only true spiritual tradition, by the way. So stakes are super, super high, but he never explained what this rite of initiation is. How can you say it's so important and not tell us how to do it? That's part of reading. It should have been a question. It should have stuck out for us so that this is at page 20. all the way at the end at page 94, he finally tells us how to do it. But if you gave up too early, you won't get there. You won't get the initiation. You won't be let into the club. Of course, if you're not going to soccer training, you won't get on the pitch on Saturday. You gotta be training. You gotta be doing it. You gotta be doing it, because otherwise you're not listening to him. You are just approaching him like someone with a sick condition of the soul. You're just interested in your own opinions. You don't even know where they came from. Your parents, your religion, your culture, your myths. Like Simius and Cebes. Their opinions about the soul being like harmony, or like a not outliving your last jacket. A byproduct of the physical body. That's why they had fears of doing this. If you're reading for the Phaedo in this way, you're not going to get it. But we're not doing that. Why? Because we're doing the dialectic, the one thing he's telling us to do. And we saw, if we do it that way, we can catch ourselves. Whenever we're like, nah, I don't really agree with that. Screw you, Socrates. We're in this. We think we're smarter than Socrates. We are slave to our ignorance. Who's smarter? Your dad? Your mum? Smarter than Socrates? Really? Oh, but my mum was a saint. Well, you can think that, but you're not going to learn. Sorry to be impolite. Sorry, not sorry. But if we do that, and we all will, because we're human beings, and we didn't have the art of the logos when we had our first teachers, parents usually, parental figures, we can catch ourselves, but we don't want to do that. And we are only able to catch ourselves because we just did a dialectic on the dialectic, which is one of the tools. If you see something, if you see a pattern, apply it in other areas. That's division. You see the importance of dialectic, do it on being, do it on justice, do it on beauty, do it on the soul. But another technique we have is, if you see a pattern, apply it to itself. That's the dialectic. That's the last stage. Others back to self. So like yesterday, Des was saying, giving self-beliefs of the self is the cause of our self problems. So that's the word self repeated upon itself. Equally too, repeat it to, if you see a pattern, apply the pattern to the pattern. That's ousia. You have a mind, use your mind to know the mind. That's ousia. You have a dialectic, do a dialectic on the dialectic. So that's one of the ways of playing. It's one of the cool techniques we have in this game. And because we can recognize when we're in a problem, when we're missing the mark, and we can also learn what we should be doing to this last section of the text. We need to, therefore, if it's not literal, where are we in the text? 94. If it's not literal, but something like this, that we have to risk the belief, what's risking the belief? The true practice of philomethesis, learning. Repeat this belief, Socrates said. That's what learning is. But you don't stay there. You have to go from learning to philosophy, or philodianoia. What's that? Apply those things you hold as a belief. Pull out the terms, the patterns, the structure. Apply the dialectic to it. That's your learning and nurture. That's the dialectic. So he's telling us to do it, but not telling us explicitly, because he's saying, look, if you can't do it, you're not going to get it. In other words, if you don't realize that when I say risk the belief, you have to tie it in to the other time where I said you had to risk the belief. What was that? That's what it was when I said this true loving of learning. True loving of learning. Okay, I can't find it in my word search because I can't search for that whole expression. But that's what I think it was pretty recent actually. There was a text that we recently read where it said, this is true lovers of learning. Risking and repeating this belief. Okay, so you can say, oh, that's that key expression that I can tie in our sewing needle of infinite truths, weaving it together. All right. So what do we do when we realize true learning? Yes, dialectic is a cheat code menu. Well, if we recognize that this is a code, if you're reading it like a non-dialectician, you're going to miss it. But if you're playing, here's your reward. You recognize what he's saying. This is love of the learning. And what do you do when you have philomethesis? You go to philosophy. What's that? The dialectic. So if we are wanting to participate of nous, what brings us to nous? That's right up at the beginning. Tied into the beginning. The ousia of being is contemplated not through the body, but whoever prepares himself with most accurate dianoia, that's the dialectic, they will approach closest to nous. So he's saying here, if you have nous, if you want nous, then you'll realize it's not literally this way, but to risk the belief and then apply what we are concluding, the dialectic to it, and that will be an incantation. Now, incantation, when was the other time that was talked about? Incantation is he talked about singing to the souls. So he did talk about so the other time he used the words incantation was when he said singing to yourself the dialectic to purify yourself from your problems. You sing away your fears as though you're singing away you're persuading your inner child not to fear death as though it was a boogeyman and not real. So that was the right, name it. Right, understand it, name it. Naming it is the synthesis stage of the dialectic. So that was the other time he used the expression incantation to talk about, a translator said it was like singing. But the other time, so this is removing our problems, but the other time was where incantation was talked about was the initiation. That's what a spiritual initiation is. We just read that part. So if we do a dialectic on this last boss, the last big giant metaphor, and that's why Socrates said, that's why I spent so long talking about it. Usually he takes a conversation back and forth as a dialectic. But here he's saying, this is why I spent so long talking about this particular one. This is why I have been prolonging the tale, to give you something to apply the dialectic to. And if you do it, it will either purify your false beliefs or it will initiate you into the experience of that thing you are doing a dialectic on, of that thing you are contemplating, true contemplation or true meditation, true spirituality. I'm giving you something to do your spiritual work, your philosophical work on, the dialectic on. And if it works, it will be a kind of incarnation that will be a kind of initiation into the realm of Hades. But because you've gone, or the realm of being, we can say, and because you've gone through the dialectic to get there, you will be prepared and purified, and you'll have all those benefits we talked about, integration, and you can make use of it. But also, if you do get there through the dialectic, specifically on the nature of Hades and its inner world, then you might be able to be like, hang on a second, I was just contemplating this place. I was just understanding it through the dialectic. I'm going to avoid where the many souls are going through the punishments and the rewards and then the reincarnations. I am going to use my incantation, my initiation, my nous, my freeing of the soul, freedom. I'm going to use my freedom not to get wrapped up in what everyone else is doing, but go to the surface of the realm of being and meet those better men and guides. Where did he say that last? To be with those who have purified themselves sufficiently by philosophy, dialectic, and live without a body, who are seeking an even more beautiful habitation. I'm going to be with those who are free and liberated. Who are... Where did he say that they're men and guides and fellow travelers? Fellow travelers and guides. Fellow travelers and leaders. Right, so, by the way, hasn't that been what we've been doing? So if your activity was dialectic, which the many call empty talk or the many call useless, you have yourself been doing what the most people are not doing. And if most people are wrapped up in physical pleasures and pains and drama and riches and loving of contention and all that sort of stuff, but you haven't been seeking what they've been seeking, then your initiation into the realm of being, you have been practicing doing the very thing we ought to do when we get there. Not get wrapped up in the pleasures, pains, the fears, or the rewards and punishments that the many souls are going through. Not doing what the many are doing or think worth doing, but going to the true habitation or the more beautiful habitation. The surface of the realm of being and meeting those better men and gods who have completed their work. The very thing we did to get there, because doing dialectic is literally doing that here. Because there ain't no fame or riches for people doing a dialectic. Almost nobody reads the text in this way. Most people are not into the dialectic of what it really is. Most people don't even know what the dialectic really is because they've never done a dialectic on the dialectic, so they've got no idea what it is, and they're probably going to be stuck in what it's not. So in other words, you're not following the many right now. You're not following your physical pleasures right now. If you are doing this, you are doing what Socrates is saying here. You're ignoring the pleasures and physical adornments of the body, and you are loving learning. So you're literally doing what the many aren't. You're not interested in the pleasures and pains or rewards and punishments that the many are interested in. To be different, to seek something higher. So that if this is the dialectic that we're going to practice and train up on and then apply to the final boss, the true earth, to really defeat this final boss and win this text. If that's what we've been doing to get there, then when we get there, we likely are going to be training and perfecting and bathing our soul so that when we get there, we will also not be interested in what the many souls are doing, because the many are stuck in prison of reincarnation. We're probably also not going to be seeking the rewards and punishments that they get in Tartarus and in the Aracasian fields and in the different rivers. We've been training ourselves to when we get there, like, oh wow, look at what let's follow the crowd. Oh, look at all the pleasures and pains they have from their rewards and punishments before their reincarnation. Wow, I'm going to do what they're all doing because that's what I trained to do in my life. Nope, we're not training in that way. We're doing the right training, the proper training, the true education and nurture that Socrates is outlining for us, which is, in one word, dialectic. You're not going to get famous probably doing the dialectic, or rich probably. And it's not the most popular thing. The Olympics are on right now. That's a lot of people are watching that. Yay, Olympics. Where is the dialectic event in the Olympics? The most important thing. I just watched the opening ceremony and they played the Imagine song from John Lennon. Imagine everyone living imagine the world being one. Well, yeah, imagine it, but how do we do it? This. At the end, there was a saying, we stand for peace. Fine, but how do you do it? Do you understand peace? You stand for it, but do you understand what it is? what is the peace or the harmony? Is peace a kind of harmony of the parts? Is peace everyone sitting still and there being no ups and downs? No, that's not peace. Peace is harmonizing it, using the dialectic to understand the cause of problems when they come up, see them as gifts to purify the soul, and then use the freedom from our problems to seek our excellence. That's true peace. So where is the event in the Olympics for the dialectic? Why is it all how fast you can run or swim or throw something? Right? So we are doing something that's not an event in the Olympics. So that when we get to the higher earth, if there's a big Olympics event ceremony where most souls are going to, and then they pat themselves, oh, what was your life like? Oh, well, here's some rewards for you. Oh, you really did that bad thing. Well, here's some punishment, now you can go back and forth. Now you go home after the Olympics are finished, go back to your everyday world. Reincarnation. If that's the event, we are going to be like, oh no, where are the dialecticians? The true ones? Where are the better men and gods who've completed their work? Where's Socrates at? I want to meet him at that better place on the surface of the realm of being, the highest part, or what's the word from the text? The hyparxis. What's the highest aspect of being? If that's where all souls come from, there's probably going to be lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of souls. It might even look infinite how many souls there are, but let's ignore all those souls that are just going back and forth, go to the top or the hyparxis, what we're calling the sixth dimension, meet Socrates, say, hey, I've been doing something different from the many to get here. That's been my training. Who's doing the Phaedo? Who's doing the dialectic? Who's doing the Parmenides? Who has learnt to structure their reflection on self artfully? So we're not all just yelling at each other, or my opinions about reality and self are best. Punch. Just like the many do. Right? People who sell their opinions about philosophy, what do? I have a degree. You won't get tenureship. You won't get your qualification. You won't get your doctorate if you don't agree with my opinions. What do religious people do? You will go to hell. We will invade your country and kill you unless you believe what we say. What do capitalists and politicians and fascists say? We are going to invade you and kill you and make you agree with our opinions. Now, if we're in the sixth dimension, do you want those people hanging out with you? No. If you really want to know the truth about self and reality and explore the highest hyparxis aspects of reality eternally, you'd probably want to hang out with people who know how to purify that when it comes up and structure their thoughts well with the dialectic, and cooperatively and friendly and encouragingly, the very same way Socrates is doing, and the very same way that the one time the word was mentioned in the text is the best way we advise our own souls. So this is page 62. You can correct yourself harshly with suffering that accompanies physical training and medical treatments, sometimes more gently with threats. But if you advise by having a dialectical conversation, that is the best way. The one time the word dialectic is used in the text, interestingly enough, if you know why that's important. So it makes sense. So when we get there, we got there through being different from our pleasures and pains and desires, and different from the many, so that when we get there, we are going to maybe not look at them, but look at where Socrates is in the sixth dimension, where the better people are and better gods. And we're going to bring with it our dialectic. So if they are fellow travelers, and Socrates says here, by the way, even those people at that pure habitation, not in the inner regions, the prisons, but above, there's an above in the realm of being. Hey, just like if you do separate yourself from the body, you're going to fly around and go to the Olympics and see what everyone else is doing? The many have the pleasures and pains of your team winning? Or are you going to collect yourself together while out of the body and go to an even higher realm, maybe the realm of being? So too, when you get to the realm of being, are you going to see what all the many souls are doing? Or you already got an understanding of that because you've already beaten the boss of the Phaedo. You've already understood it. It's not going to be so fascinating anymore. You're going to understand. You're going to make sense of it. You're not going to be afraid of it and run back to your body or whatever. But you're going to probably not be interested in it and be asking, hey, where are those who are above in the pure habitation, who have their home upon the higher region of the realm of being? Those who have purified themselves sufficiently. What's that? The conclusion of the dialectic. Through philosophy. What's that? The dialectic. And from that time hence, live altogether without a body. Wow. As having the freedom liberated from the prison of reincarnation, going into the lower part of the realm of being. And even they will arrive at even more beautiful habitations. But it's not easy to talk about that clearly, and we don't really have time. So I'm just going to mention that even when you do all of this, and you've completed your work, and you've practiced separating from the many, and your desires, and the fames and honors and riches that the many do, not getting away from being a follower and seeking the highest goals, the loftiest goals, that's called excellence. He mentions it here as well. Excellence, reaching for the highest. Here, page 94, right where we were. Map 94. 94, yes, here. Make every effort to participate in excellence. Right after, literally the line after where we were. Sufficiently purified yourself. If you have gone through every detail and made every effort to participate in excellence and phronesis, then the prize is beautiful and the hope is great for us. So reach for the highest, here, there, and when you get there, you'll be with other people who have this phronesis, this art of the dialectic, and a habit of reaching for excellence. To this even more beautiful habitations. They're going somewhere. That's curious. Even if you went to the top or the hyparxis upon being, and you've escaped from the prison of reincarnation, there's even further that Socrates isn't mentioning here. So that would be the final form of the final boss. Maybe, hypothesis, would be to see if we can not only understand the nature of being, how it's a model for our soul, what would be the sixth dimension, but maybe the final form or the final part of the battle against the final boss would be, what is this seventh dimension? And if we practice it and if we train, we're preparing for it. It's our way there. And it's the kind of training that when we do get there, we'll be ready to do it well. We won't get tricked or wrapped up in the problems and get stuck in prison. So this is why we're going to train the dialectic. We need to, so therefore, that's our task. We have the stakes, we have the motivation, we have the reasons, we understand why it's going to be a good practice to do, even if there's only going to be a handful of us doing it, even if everyone else is more interested in the Olympics. That simple fact, that simple training is going to be a training for us. So that's the training we're going to be doing next. We're going to be, with all this in mind, the stakes, the motivation, the understanding, the interest, we're going to go back to the key arguments of the text, practice the dialectic, train ourselves up, which is like, we'll accept a quest. We'll go to the earlier areas of the game, defeat this area, defeat this area, master the dialectic through this argument, through this argument, through this argument. Every time we'll get better at it until finally we'll be back at this. I think there are 4 arguments for the immortality of the soul, and then the 2 arguments against the counterattacks from Simius and Cebes. Maybe we can even go to Socrates, before he demonstrates it, his definition of philosophy, his doctrine, because that was an earlier speech. Maybe we should start with that. So start with his doctrine, apply the dialectic to it, then go, that's his definition, then go to his demonstrations, the 4 arguments for the immortality of the soul and the necessity for reincarnation. And then maybe division would be the next stage. The counterattacks. Now that we have demonstrated the dialectic, then Simius and Cebes say, but my religious beliefs say these other things. And now everybody's in confusion. Oh, okay. So now we have to divide what we've just defined as true into what's not true. To purify our friends, to artfully benefit our friends. So let's draw that up on the board. So this is our map for where we're going to go now. This is our training. Our training for the final boss. Our training. Our training for the final boss of the Phaedo. By the way, dialectic also involves mythology. So, is there a mythological figure used in the text that the hero has to go through in a confusing adventure to reach and then defeat, that might represent our what we're doing here? Well, maybe this is the mythology of the Minotaur. How do you spell Minotaur? Minotaur, I think. Minotaur? Because at the very beginning of the text, the whole reason why we have time to have this conversation with Socrates is because no one's allowed to be murdered by the state until the celebration, interesting, we have an Olympic celebration right now. This great celebration for a week, interesting, Olympics, is happening in Athens because in honor of the god Apollo, who is the god of music, incantations, and philosophy, thumbs up. But it's also in honor of Theseus going through the labyrinth to slay the Minotaur. So this slaying of the Minotaur by the hero in this myth maybe, or really should, characterize or represent what we are doing now, going back through the labyrinth of the text, overcoming levels, leveling up in the dialectic so that we can finally defeat the final boss, the final metaphor of the true earth. That didn't make any sense, seemed very complicated. Normally it's a step-by-step conversation Socrates has, but this one he went to great lengths to talk in great detail, so it's even more significant. So it's even harder to understand. Minotaur, Minotaur. So this is the biggest boss, Minotaur, just like the Minotaur in the myth. Minotaur, maybe. Don't know, that's a hypothesis. We'll see if it turns out that way. So our map that we're going to be running with would be, well, our training is in the dialectic. So let's make that clear. Our training in the, it's an art of there's one dialectic would involve. So we're going to use the dialectic to map out what we're doing. Self itself, or the definition. Of the text. Maybe that's Socrates' doctrine of philosophy, or defense as well. Because he talked about, hey, hopefully my explanation or my argument for philosophy is going to be more persuasive than it was to the many who were the jurors who sentenced me to death for doing what we're all supposed to be doing, which is tragically funny. Philosophy. So we should apply a dialectic to that. Apply the dialectic to how does Socrates, after he defines it, how does he demonstrate it with his friends? Because if it's an art, you not only have to go through these stages in your own thinking, but with your friends. Philosophy is not a one-person game.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
So here how he demonstrates it would be the 4 arguments for the immortality of soul and reincarnation. Now, there's a puzzle here because the third one, Seebees did himself. So maybe that one would be the next category. So we take all 4 of those demonstrations and apply the dialectic to it. Socrates is doing it at real time, but we need to train up. That's our preparation. That's our bathing of the soul and waiting for our divine destiny. I say that because at the end of what he just read, he said, I'm going to have a bath, which is obviously, he's not saying that for no reason. Whoops, bath. So he talks about bathing his body for his death, but we know he's talking about bathing the soul. For the allotted destiny to summon us. And this ties together with right at the beginning. In his page, where is it? All right, okay. I'm pretty sure he says the divine self. In his definition. Here we go. So this bathing your soul until your divine destiny calls you. He also says this practicing of the dialect of dianoia is a purification from the body until the divine self should liberate us from the body. This doctrine we have to repeat to each other and believe. That's the right practice of learning. So our purification or bathing of the soul until the divine self or our divine destiny summons us, calls us in, lets us into the club we're waiting for, we're preparing for. So now we've got so the third of the 4 categories: division, Often in arguments, this is where your proof comes in, because you can take A, what it is, the implications that follow, or the consequences that follow, or B, if it isn't, and if the implications, if there are contradictions or impossibilities that follow, it's a kind of proof for the opposite. Or if this is sufficient and beautiful, it's a kind of proof that should change your mind. That was one of the questions we've been carrying. What should change our mind? So an example of division in this conversation is, what isn't true? Side B. Or rather, Simius and CB's false beliefs about what we just defined and demonstrated. About that. So we have to, oh, clap. This is Socrates' response to their false beliefs. Remember, they're all thrown into disarray. So we can train ourselves in seeing how that was approached with the dialectic structure. And then all of that is our training for the final boss, or others back to self, or synthesis, analysis, which is the final thing, which should take all of that which precedes. The whole reason why we come into the body is to do something. Well, we're returning back to the self in some way. So what's the point of what's the point of, this is one of our questions we're carrying with us. What's the point of going through all of this, the reincarnations and things, only to return? What's the point of going through this reflection only to go back to the start in this last, that's what we saw before. Remember? We already had a definition about what the dialectic isn't, what philosophy isn't. It's opinions, it's philonikos, lovers of debate and fighting. But we went through, we saw more of it, and then we came to at the end of it, we unified or synthesized it and say, oh, by the way, it's all of this can be unified as the anti-logos, or the conclusion, it's the greatest defect of the soul. So we go back to the start, we still see that, oh, what philosophy or dialectic isn't is about opinion or lovers of debating or arguing. But now we also benefit by seeing even more that it's the greatest defect of the soul, or it's the anti-logos. So too, if we are going back to, maybe we were in the sixth dimension sometime, but we're going back with the art of the dialectic to see more about what that beautiful habitation is like, and that it's worth going beyond it. Whoops, that looks like something weird. To the seventh dimension. In other words, there's a benefit from having gone through this, getting a question, that's our problem that we have to purify, and getting a question that we have to remember, our perfection, the ladder up and its shadow. Somehow having both of these problems and our dreams that can help with both gives us opportunities to perfect our dialectic, and somehow going back to that sixth dimension with the dialectic is beneficial in some way. Help us see what was there the whole time, but maybe we can see more clearly or with greater benefit having gone back. Pathodaimon anti-logos. Right. Yes. Metal song name. Pathodaimon anti-logos. That is a cool song name. So, equally so, having gone through all this, we should be able to apply it to, hopefully, the myth, song, incantation, of the true earth. That is our final stage. This is our final boss. This is the training we have to go to prepare for it. So we've played through the game on easy mode, kind of. We've been touching like this as we go through, but now we see the stakes. Now we see the importance. Now we see what it's all leading up to. Not just all of our reading, our whole lives, not just our whole lives, all of our reincarnations have been leading up to this. So, worth doing the training. As the opening screen, I have a picture of Socrates training with Goku when I was a kid. Me and my friends liked watching the Dragon Ball Z cartoon on TV after school. And I was always puzzled about that because half of the episode is just them, like most of the series is them training because there is a big boss called Vegeta and Nappa on the way. They know he's coming and they spend like 2 years or something training and preparing to face that big boss. So it was like months and months and months of just them preparing and training. And I was always puzzled because it was so freaking cool. I didn't know why it was so cool. It doesn't make sense that it was so cool. It was just training and preparing, but we all loved it. We are in that stage right now. We are preparing for Vegeta and Nappa to return. We are preparing to face the Minotaur, or this myth, incarnation, metaphor of the true Earth. And now we know why. You liked it too, yeah. So it's interesting. That's what we're doing now. We're going to go back and we're going to train. We are going to be active participants in the quest, our quest, the quest of man, and our quest for our destiny, the purification and perfection of our soul. And we should enjoy it. As Socrates says, our job is to take pleasure not in our physical senses, not in fashion and clothes and Bugattis and jewelry, but concern yourself seriously with the pleasures of learning and adorn your soul not with alien things, but with the adornments of self, sound-mindedness that we can loosely call right now desiring the dialectic, justice, what we can call using the dialectic, virility, the power, the courage and the power and motivation we have to seek the dialectic right now. Freedom, the freedom that we get when we apply, when we can notice anything that is other than this, a sign of a problem or a block or a tangent that we can apply the dialectic to gain freedom from our problems. And truth, of course, nous, that we get of the contemplation as when we sufficiently do a dialectic. The truth, nous. In this way that we are going to be training in, we will be awaiting our journey into the invisible realm of Hades, or the realm of being, or Usia. And we're being prepared to go when we will be prepared when our allotted destiny summons. When it's time for us to jump in, we will have been preparing and doing nothing other than that, and enjoying the pleasure of that, and the freedom and truth of that, and the power and virility from that, and the sense of justiceness and temperance of seeking that at all times and functioning with it at all times. So if we do that, we will necessarily be benefited, and we will be the true heroes or the true braves. So us braves will be of good cheer. And that's what we're doing. So a modern word for braves, true heroes, doing this with courage and virility and freedom and temperance and justice and truth. What's the modern word for a true brave? Super Saiyan. We are going to be true Super Saiyans. Or Jedis, if you like. Or I don't know what a Harry Potter is. A Mogwai? What's a Harry Potter if you're a brave in a Harry Potter world? Wizard? You're a wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard, Harry.
All right, we're going to be Super Saiyans. That's what we're going to be doing. That's going to be the channel that's going to be coming up next. So, let's check in with the chat. Sorry, I've been neglecting a lot of the chat. Right. My goodness, I've been so neglectful of chat today. I've been on a roll. I've been taking time to outline this myth. Yeah, you've just been agreeing with what I've been saying. Dialect, I like dialectic as a cheat code. Magic. Your old pup is hiding her food from the cat. Oh, that's cute. Right, cool. Thanks for joining me in chat. And I hope you're excited to become true Braves. Yeah, so Braves is the prime man, or the ideal man. What we sometimes call entering the true human race. True human. So it's necessarily benefiting for the Braves, the true humans, to be of good cheer if we act in this way. And that's what we're doing. So true Braves or Super Saiyans or Jedis, whatever you want to call us, the ideal, the actual human quest that all of the other ones, Saiyans, Jedis, Harry Potter stories, they're all based on. The true Braves, the true ideal kinds of men, people in the human race. That's what we're doing. That's the training. If you see images of Goku, now you know why. He's a warrior race. Yeah, he's training. He wants to be the ideal. He wants to be excellent, and he's training to defeat Vegeta, who's coming. So too, we are training to defeat the Minotaur, and the map that we do it, the map that we're using is the dialectic. We're using the dialectic to break the text into its 4 sections, and in each of those sections, apply the dialectic to them. That is our training. So then we get to the last section to synthesize it all together, which we can use to better understand Socrates' doctrine from the start. That's the final myth, song, incantation, or metaphor of the true earth. And makes sense. People who just read it normally, they'll say, oh, that's Socrates' doctrine of philosophy. I agree with it or I don't, whatever, who cares? But now with the analysis, we can take our work back to better understand what Socrates was talking about the whole time. Just like he's been saying, you guys are like little fishies under the water. You don't know that there is me up there on the real surface of the earth, looking at the stars and the sun in the sky. You think you're seeing the real world, but you're underwater. You need to stick your head above the water and look out. And see, I'll draw a better fish than that. And see the sun and the heavenly bodies. Now, on one level, yes, we understand what he's saying. But also, if there is a sun and heavenly bodies, there is a hierarchy. So there is something happening here. So when we get back to the myth, the stars are going to be meaning something. But also, if there is one star predominantly standing above all of them, there's probably going to be a great significance in understanding what the heck does the sun refer to in that metaphor. So there's our map. There's what we're going. And what we're doing, we are practicing being 6th dimensional beings. We are literally collecting ourselves together, separating from the many, separating from our physical body and pleasures and pains, collecting ourselves together as fellow adventurers to perfect ourselves in the art we're here for and take the greatest journey. We're literally doing what we are going to be doing in the 6th dimension if we do it well. We are training for not just the final boss, but the next incarnation, or our hopefully last incarnation, or our surpassing incarnations. Collecting ourselves together, together sharing the art of the dialectic, holding on to it forever, but also maybe even traveling to a greater place beyond even where we are, the sun itself. So that's what we're going to be doing. Really fun. Now that we've got that map out of the way, or underway, under our belts, let's do that next time. Let's jump in with this map and practice it. I hope you're excited. I hope you're ready to train. I hope you have your similar metaphor to Goku training for Vegeta. Hey, maybe the Olympics, an Olympic athlete training for 4 years to finally perform at his best when he is summoned to fulfill his destiny in his gold medal race. Whatever it is to you, mythologize it. You're in it. You're doing the game. So create a mythology. It can help you feel good about it. Thumbs up. It can help you talk about it, help you be inspired. You know, it was, if I was looking out at a cave, it would look like what I see in my mind. Interesting. The sky ball and the night ball, the morning star. Right. Yes. Mythologize it the way that, by the way, you can borrow mythologies from other traditions and rearrange them to be more accurate, which is what Socrates says he was doing with the myths of Aesop. So we are going to improve the Super Saiyan Dragon Ball Z myth as we go too. So that's our work. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to join me on YouTube or Twitch in our live streams, or like and subscribe if you're watching this later on the YouTube channel. You can find the text for free underneath. You can join our Discord and get notifications when we go live, and share thoughts with me and with other people. And if you can support, and you can support on Patreon if you have the means to, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, should be a link below somewhere. And as we get more support on Patreon, we're going to introduce other things like watch along of great philosophical talks by Dr. Grimes, who has a master of the Logos, where we can break it down, apply our understanding to that. We're reading the philosophical midwifery text. That'll be on YouTube for a while, but then that'll go up on Patreon, I think, too, which is the dialectic. And even we're going to get into using this understanding of the art of the dialectic, not also for the next dimension down. So if this is this dimension, if it's the same Logos, then other arts. And one art is music. So music is interesting because anybody can play music. And in my study with the Noetic Society and Dr. Pierre Grimes, most people in their work on this way realize that it's worth picking up a musical instrument and mastering the art of music, which itself follows the dialectic. So you can use it to, and by the way, it's a way of participating, demonstrating. You can learn the dialectic and you can test what you learn. So it might take a while maybe until the divine self or your allotted destiny calls you up to the 6th dimension, but you can every day apply it to music. So pick up a musical instrument, one that you put down when you were young or one that you've always been interested in. And if you do, we are going to get into a text which will allow us to follow along and pull out the dialectic and Logos of music itself. So sometime soon we're going to be doing that, maybe putting that up on the channel. And the more support we get on Patreon, the more able we will be to do those sorts of things. Midwifery, more Platonic texts, watch along videos, discovering the Logos and the dialectic of music, and maybe even some pop culture stuff. Maybe watching some modern philosopher talks and using our art of the Logos to diagnose, to understand, and to make sense of where philosophy is in the mainstream or in popular culture. That can be fun too. So lots of thoughts. If you have any thoughts about that or ideas or suggestions, feel free to leave the comments in the comments below. Leave your thoughts in the comments below or share them on the Discord. Any help or contribution or insights, greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you all next time.
Wow.
Fun games and funny videos. Yes. 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 It can be fun. Yes. That's a possibility if we get some support. Oh, that's, yeah. Maybe we can play some video games and also have the fun of and the relaxation of video games while also looking for analogical terms to the dialectic in the games or in funny videos. That's a possibility too. So lots of possibilities if we get some support and interest through Patreon. So lots of fun there. And then we cheer. And then we have confetti. Confetti? Where's my confetti? All right, no confetti. I have to make the confetti. So thank you all very much for joining me. And here's some confetti. And I hope to see you all next time.